Thank you so much for staying with us. The Nigerian Federation and its many challenges, another look at it. Joining me to take a look at that is Barrister Tony Nnamdi, Secretary General, Lower Niger Congress and co-convener Movement for New Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Thank you
For joining us. To join us much later, any moment from now, is a newspaper columnist and a policy analyst, Majid Dahiru. Before we welcome him, let's start with you. Persistent problems we have seen over decades now.
Yes.
Successive governments come with incremental actions to deal with the problem, but a lot of people have come to the conclusion that it may persist except radical and fundamental changes are made, especially to the structure. Is it a structural problem or attitudinal problem? Some others have said no. Even with the words of the Constitution, once you have the right mindset, people sticking to not just the letters, but also the spirit of the Constitution, you get a wonderful country.
Well, just last week, the spokesman of the president, Femi Adesina, our good friend, had cause to confess that Nigeria was built on a false foundation. Before that last week, just in August of 2019, the UN Special Rapporteur that came to look at all the commotion, the killings, and everything going wrong here, came out with a verdict that the Constitution of Nigeria is like a pressure cooker for injustice. The two are saying the same thing. Femi is telling us, 20 years after we began to tell everybody that the foundation upon which we are building is a false foundation. So that's where the problem is coming from. So it's a structural problem. And if the UN has come to where it has reached the conclusion that the constitution by which Nigeria is convened and operated is pressure cooker for injustice, it means that we have left the tap on. Every other thing we are doing is like mopping, because it can only get worse. Look at it from 1999. It can only get worse. Whether it's the killings going on in the Middle Belt, or the agitations going on in the Niger Delta, or the Biafra commotion that has come now, or the one we see in the Southwest, all of them are, or the corruption that seems to be growing in leaps and bounds, or the impunity we have seen, or even the matter of, everything that has gone wrong is flowing from that tap that we have left on. This constitution upon which Nigeria is convened is what is producing all of this outcome. And therefore, unless we want to watch the house collapse, if you have a house with a foundation that has, gone bad, or that was bad from inception, what do you do with it? You keep changing the windows and painting the curtain. You just take down the building. And that's what we have, you remember we were in Pronaco. Was that not the reason we convened the meeting of the owners of Nigeria to decide, a new consensus that will become the basis of constitution, so that we can ease out and wind up this pressure cooker for injustice? But 20 years down the road, the politicians and the political actors from all the sides are just gambling with the destiny of 200 million people.
Could the Constitution also be responsible for our economic woes?
100%. Every other thing is, just marginal. It is the Constitution that sequesters the basis of any economic planning. When you have a 68-item exclusive list that sees all the assets, Niger Delta is upside down all the, today, because the oil and gas assets of the region is sequestered from them, taken over from them by the Constitution of Nigeria. So as far as they are concerned, Nigeria is a robbery business. If you go to all the other sites, electricity, tell me what you can do without electricity. All of whatever they are planning to do about electricity, they are being dishonest if they do not accept that electricity on the exclusive list generation and transmission is the reason why we don't have electricity, is the reason why we won't ever have electricity. And if we have, as it is with electricity, so it is with the security. Tell me which economic plan you can draw up where people are being kidnapped every corner of the country. And you come to where infrastructure is dead because of that exclusive list. The roads are not there, the railways are not there, the ports are not there.
The railways are coming up gradually.
So how you can choose to trek. You have a meeting in Trafalgar Square. You are in Lagos. Of course you can trek through the desert. One day you get there. You can also take a speedboat or some canoe. One day you sail there. But if I was the one who had to attend that meeting, I will board a flight and go to Heathrow. So if we choose once in a long while, we go and attend. It's like mopping. It's not even effective mopping. The tap is on. That we must find some way to do away with this constitution, otherwise it will do away with Nigeria. It's already done away with Nigeria. As we speak, a majority in that country you call Nigeria are now feeling that everybody is trying to work out their way out of that pressure cooker. Whether they are waving Biafran flags, or they are doing a Odua Republic, or the ones in the middle belt that are being killed. You think they are going to fold their arms and be afraid and not take steps to recover their rights to live in peace?
Is it not, some say, some form of wishful thinking for one to say the problem is just all about the Constitution?
I'm informing you.
Some say there were successes recorded under this Constitution, successes in various aspects, and like I said earlier,
yes,
my opening question, have we spent much more time as we should on the attitude of those driving and implementing the Constitution?
Let me tell you, the Constitution creates all of the problems we are trying to solve. And we will be dishonest if we think that the place will get dry with the tap still running. We say, let's go turn off the tap. That's what we went out to do in Pronaco, and we succeeded. Incidentally, all of the people who are now pretending they don't know what the problem is and inviting us to all kinds of idiotic solutions, they were all involved in the time we called this meeting of the owners of Nigeria. Nobody was left out. The current president, Muhammad Buhari, was part of the Fulani delegation that came to that conference. 164 ethnic delegations for 2 years. You covered some of it. And we accepted amongst ourselves. The Yoruba came as Yoruba, the Ijo came as Ijo, the Ogoni came as Ogoni, Thief, everybody. The one that is Sultan in Sokoto now, he was in the army at the time, they were all involved. We didn't leave anybody out. And for 2 years, we also persuaded those who were already angry at the time enough to carry arms against state. Ashari Dokuba and his volunteer force, Wazirika and his MASOB, OPC of Gani Adams. We got them to put their guns aside at the time to say, look, this project was not our project at the inception. It was the British that on their own colonial mission to economic journey. And what they put together hasn't served us. And the constitutional arrangements we finally entered into in 1960 got toppled in 1966.
Now, this present constitution...
let's trace where it came from.
This present presidential constitution first came up in 1979.
Yes.
Between 1960 and 1966, we have the independent constitution and, of course, the Republican constitution in 1963.
Yes.
Democracy failed between this period, 1960 to 66.
Yes.
There was a civil war.
Yes.
There was rampant corruption.
Yes.
So is it all about this constitution again? Because we had a parliamentary, regional-based government in operation there.
If we want to get to the root of the matter, I just came back from the U.S. A few weeks ago, and I was there 2 months, the whole of June, the whole of July. The international community, the stakeholders in the international arena, are seeing very clearly, so much so that they went probing to be sure. And the U.S., after 2 months of detailed congressional inquiries, which involved bringing the witnesses, the victims of the things they were seeing from afar, to come to tell them what was going on. You know what they came out with? They said what was going on in Nigeria was basically Fulani ethnic cleansing against the indigenous nationalities of Nigeria. And it didn't start last night for the purpose of taking over their assets. If you go back to what collapsed the constitutions of the First Republic in 1966, was it not just the other day that General Danjuma was telling us what happened after he arrested Ironsi and Fajuyi? That some people shoved him aside and took away the men. So there is this monster in the background that is not visible to anybody. And just a few days ago, just 3 days ago, that the governor in Bauchi was informing us that the Fulani from everywhere, anywhere they come from in Africa, that once they come into this place, they were entitled to everything that the federal government was going to provide. I'm telling you what led to the collapse of those constitutions. The constitution is not the document you see. Constitution is simply what it means to constitute. What is the agreement by which the George Ogoni, the Anang, the Efik, the Fulani, the Hausa came together with their lands and their sovereignties to become a union? It's supposed to be a mutually benefiting arrangement. But we have come to where, and a federation is a union of constitutions. The moment the constitutions that federate get toppled, you cease to be a federation. That was what happened to us in 1966. Our federation collapsed. And it was that.
So can we say it was due to that constitution?
There were
truly federal constitution that concentrated so much powers to the component states, unlike what we have today.
No, there were things in the background that the British did wrong in 1914. Those things, they loaded power for some purpose of theirs. They loaded power unduly into the hands of one of the components in the federation they were putting together. That was why it had a problem.
But it was a total agreement of all the component states and nationalities. Remember the conferences in London and in Nigeria?
Yes, that's what
they all agreed and signed on to that constitution.
That's what I'm telling you. The British was the midwife that knew where it put what. At the end of the day,
but the other parties
those things
consented.
Yes.
So will it be right to now blame the British?
No, the British. You think they left? There's a concept called sovereignty. Your sovereignty, which is your ultimate right to rule over yourself, is always with you. It never leaves you. But the day the colonial power comes, it becomes a suzerain power. It becomes the suzerainty that suppresses your sovereignty. What happened in 1960 was that we thought we were getting independent. But what they did was that the British handed over to a local agent. And we are still, everything we lament now.
Did the British hand over, or there were some negotiations?
Let me tell you.
Record that there were many possibilities.
Oh, just like
the action group opened up discussions with the NCNC. The MPC also opened up discussions with the NCNC. It was the choice of the NCNC to go into an alignment with the MPC that threw up the government. Can we say it was the British that threw up the government? There were alternatives.
Yes, who announced, at what point was the result of the election announced? Had the votes been counted all? Let me tell you what, just for us to take it from the horse's mouth. In the week of independence, Ahmadu Bello was celebrating with his lieutenants. And hear what he tells them. At the time, other people were drinking champagne. He says to them, and I'm quoting, "The new nation called Nigeria should be an estate of our great-grandfather Uthman Dan Fodio. We must ruthlessly prevent a change of power. We use the minorities of the North as willing tools and the South as a conquered territory, and never allow them to rule over us, and never allow them to have control over their future." This was reported in Parrot newspapers of 12th October 1960.
Was he the only one that made such extreme statements? Many others were credited also to other regional leaders.
For you to understand what he was celebrating, we go back again to 1913. And I have another thing from the Secretary for the Colonies, Lord Harcourt, the one after whom Port Harcourt was named, in a telegram in which he was trying to explain to those who wanted to know what they were about to do on the 1st of January in 1914. And let me quote from that telegram. so you can understand what happened in October of 1960. Harcourt says, he said, we have released northern Nigeria from the leading strings of the treasury. The promising and well-conducted youth is now on an allowance of his own and is about to effect an alliance with the Southern Lady of Means. I have issued the special license, and Sir Frederick Lugard will perform the ceremony. May the union be fruitful and the couple constant. Secretary of State, Lugard. You know, so the Harcourt. Now, as at that time in 1914, what the British did was to empower their local agent, who are still now presiding over us.
But like I put it to you earlier, prior to the formation of the government in 1960, there was the possibility that NCNC and Action Group could have formed a coalition.
That's the front end.
What stopped that?
That's the front end. You know, I have been with the very people who went into that negotiation. Enoro spent the last 7 years of his life trying to tell us exactly where they missed it, because at that time there were documents that there were things they didn't know, which we had dug out by ourselves. We broke into the archives everywhere across the globe, the same way WikiLeaks will get at information. We now saw what these people set out to do, and we began to trace how they managed to get us to where we found ourselves as at that time. And from that 1914 order in council to 1922 constitution to the one of 46, to all of them, the principle was the same: to create a sovereignty that will suppress our sovereignty. This constitution we have on the table is a cumulative product of 150 years of this kind of
Maybe
effort.
when we come back from this short break, we'll talk about how those that were also in contention then did not notice what you're insinuating,
they did not
how they also
I had the
became
privilege of asking them when I confronted them with the documents.
Part of the process, the NCNC, MPC coalition
I've been with
brought
all
that
of
government.
I've been with all of them.
After the short break, then our second guest, Majid Dahiru, will be joining us. Please do stay with us. Thank you so much for still staying with us. I've been with Barrister Tony Nnamdi, Secretary General, Lower Niger Congress and co-convener Movement for New Nigeria. It's been all about the Nigerian Federation, State of the Union. He reached the conclusion that the problem has been and will always be the 1999 Presidential Constitution as amended, except otherwise we'll tinker with it. My second guest is right here with me, Majid Dahiru. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Majid Dahiru is a newspaper columnist and policy analyst. From our Twitter handle, some of our listeners are also agreeing with you. Jonathan Ove, for instance, he says the Constitution is the bedrock of corruption in Nigeria. The leaders of the country shelve the Constitution and follow theirs religiously. And at the end of the day, what do we have? Eze Buruburu, even a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Adeyeye, said it during one of their plenaries. He said the problem of Nigeria is Nigeria's constitution, the 1999 constitution. The contents of the constitution, contents of it should be revisited and also be amended. I remember when he was within that constitution saying every other problem of the country, same way Barrister Nnamdi has also reached a conclusion, is linked directly or indirectly to that constitution. Do you share that view?
Not exactly, Mr. Amechi. Yes, no system is perfect. The constitution is not perfect. I mean, the constitution is the work of mortals. So it is subject to improvement from time to time. But I think what has been the biggest problem of the Nigerian state is not so much about the structure or the constitution. It is in its operation. And we must begin to look at how the Nigerian state is constituted organically. That for me is the problem. The way Nigeria is constituted today, the way we constitute ourselves, no matter the system you bring here, it will not work. Because systems are designed to work for nations. Nigeria is yet to achieve nationhood. Nigeria is a country of micro-ethnic nationalities whose interests are most often than not conflicting, and there is no collective agenda for nationhood in the contemporary world. So I think that is the problem, and we must begin to interrogate this issue Otherwise, if you jettison this particular constitution as we've done others before it, we will still have this conversation over and over again.
So, what of a constitution that will give vent to these divides, ethnic divides that we have, and a constitution that will help to fast-track the process of nation building?
No constitution will do that for you, with all due respect. None. It's a political process under a self-enlightened realization of all of us that we are one people, basically, from top to bottom. If we come under this realization that we are one people, now we will apply what other nations have applied to the evolution towards nationhood, and which is what? A seamless assimilation and integration of citizens wherever they choose to reside. It will be a deliberate electoral political process backed by political will and administrative processes. Without this, the law cannot in itself operate itself. Someone has to operate it. I keep saying it. There's nothing so wrong with our laws, even though there is a very big room for improvement. I mean, it's a work in progress. But we must pause and look at certain basic things. The Constitution did not ask us to be tribal. It does not ask us to be sectional. It actually tries as much as possible to foster national unity. We must give life to the spirit of the Constitution.
That's why I threw up the question. The other constitution we had, the cabinet parliamentary constitution, just as what obtains in the U.S., a lot of powers and recognition of divisions as a first step towards achieving unity. That in as much as we strive to deny these divisions and divides, that we are not doing good service to it, that we cannot be wished away. Rather, what we have is a constitution. What we should have, a constitution that recognizes them, but also recognizes the corporate existence of Nigeria.
You see, I think our difference as a nation is actually overblown. In fact, it's blunt of proportion. I keep saying this.
Can I come
just,
in?
hold on.
We are not a different people. We can actually be described as a plurality of same people. I am convinced about this. Now look, the earlier we begin to realize that we are one people and begin to restructure organically this time around our federating units away from its rigid form around ethnogeographic fault lines to geoeconomics, whereby, look, Anambra, for example, does not have to be Igbo, just as Kano does not have to be Fulani. Look, until we get to this point, we cannot be thinking of adjusting.
That's the issue of state of residence rather than state of origin.
It can come about by a political process. When I realized, for example, that this man sitting across the table with me is first and foremost a Nigerian, and I've decided to judge him by the content of his character, not his state of origin. That is the starting point. Until then, I will learn to relate with him as a Nigerian in shared interests.
You recall that that issue came up at the 2014 National Conference, a proposal to replace state of origin with state of residence, but it was shut down. A lot of people said it is because of the way the country is constituted. If you take it to the National Assembly, such an attempt to amend the Constitution will be shut down, just like we saw with the devolution of powers.
That's why I said, look, the political players today don't even realize that it is in their own best interest to begin to evolve the Nigerian state away from its current primitive structure to one that is modern, that is in sync with what obtains in the contemporary world. Look, I go back to the First Republic that I would love to talk about so much. The reason for the collapse, one of the many reasons for the collapse of the First Republic is this. The regions were rigidly ethnogeographic in nature, such that there was a conflict between indigenship and citizenship. Look, a man from Southeast is defined as an Igbo man, principally. He has limited rights in northern Nigeria. Yet, he's still living in the country where he's a citizen. It was also the same thing with somebody who is of northern Nigerian origin. He was not able to find a space in other regions because there was no system of assimilation and integration. There was nothing wrong with having an Igbo from northern Nigeria in the First Republic and the Fulani from eastern Nigeria in the First Republic. What I'm saying is not strange. The NCNC experimented with this, went through a purposeful political process. It wanted to, bring about an organic federation that actually, elevates residency over indigenship. When you had even a northerner that was supported by the party in the southeast to emerge as the mayor of Enugu, you had some people of southeast origin who won elections in the western region then under this platform. But it was discouraged because the leaders of the First Republic didn't key into this vision. It is the vision we need to key in today before we begin to talk about.
So it's left for the political leaders.
All of us are inclusive too.
Okay. You want to weigh in here?
Yeah, the fundamental disagreements in concepts. My first question will be, what is Nigeria? Because Nigeria is supposed to be a union of divergent interests, consciously built to become one functional union. And if anybody wants to understand the meaning of constitution, and I'm saying this as an expert in jurisprudence, my students in that field are the professors of law who teach in the universities. And I can tell you authoritatively that if you do not understand what we the people, having solemnly resolved to live in unity, means, you will not understand, do hereby give unto ourselves the following constitution. Like the memo and articles is to a company, that's what the constitution is to the country. Leave the document you see in front. Britain doesn't have one written like this. There are two things that the memo is the document that creates the company. That Mr. Mr. ABC come together to form themselves into XYZ Limited. The article is a different document altogether that defines the relationships as they agree among themselves amongst the owners of XYZ Limited. What happened to Nigeria, from which Nigeria will die? You know what I mean by die? From which Nigeria will collapse if we do not accept that that is what our situation is. The whole world has seen it. It's not for nothing that the UN came sending the mission. It's not for nothing that the US spent almost 7 months inside 2019 to see whether they could get to the root of the matter. And I can assure you, they've gotten to the root of the matter. The international system is already getting ready for how to manage the products of that pressure cooker. You have a majority that want out of that bad arrangement today. And what is their reason? You sit on their sovereignty, because it is up to them to do what they will with their sovereignty. And you seize it and you put it underneath and begin to dictate to them by a document you made over their head. How did we come about this? In 1975, Murtala Mohammed came in. He commissioned Rotimi Williams to make a draft for him that went to Constituent Assembly in 1977. And we ended up with something that came out in 1979, processed by Obasanjo. All of the things the Constituent Assembly, it wasn't a product of the people. And if you want to know how far we have gone away from where we should have been going, let me just take it from even their own admission inside the document. If we do not get it, the union will go up in smoke because we are arguing blindly. Section 14, subsection 2A says that sovereignty belongs to the people of Nigeria, from whom government through this constitution derives all its powers and authority. Do you know what that means? It is the Yoruba that could be a country of 55 million people that will decide whether they want to be in this union and therefore to commit to a Nigeria that will enhance their prospects. What has happened is that Yoruba is now here against their will. The East went to war to say, let us go back to what can work for all of us. Nigeria beat them down and tied them up. The Jaw suddenly found themselves in the same situation. Well, now we have a majority. We have more than 3/4 of the country looking for how to escape from that prison.
What constitution, what nature of constitution do you think will be like a cement to bind us?
There are two things to be done. And that was what Bola Ige was trying to tell us. That's what we have done in this, all these movements in the last 20 years. two things must be done. We have to accept that we have not made a constitution, that it is a lie that we submitted our sovereignty to be managed in this manner. Two, we then have to go to the process by which we will give up what we want to give up and keep what we must keep.
By way of amendment or a new constitution?
No, there's nothing to amend. We have not made a constitution. Those people
who have to start from the scratch.
No, those people who gather in the national, was it amendment that cured apartheid? The same principles that led to apartheid constitution are the principles we have here, the principles of master and servant.
Okay.
And the people in the National Assembly who are pretending they are going to fix it, I tell you, their mandate, the legislative mandate of National Assembly does not include constitution making.
Okay.
They are committing treason against the rest of us in pretending that the ones who have now become the owners of our sovereignty.
Let me get your perspective.
So there's no such thing as a Yoruba nation. Neither is there a thing as the Igbo nation or the Ijaw nation. If you leave the Yorubas, those that identify today as Yoruba, on their own, different identities will emerge. You're going to have the
That's sub-identities.
Sub down to this, to all sub-Igbos, from us use that expression. Let us leave this theory behind and move ahead.
Why can't we discuss it?
Hold on.
Why can't we discuss it? It has come to where people are going to exercise.
Let's allow him to
anything that is up to they can find.
Nobody
is going to remain in this pressure cooker and die in it.
Let's allow him to express his point.
Thank you very much. There's no such thing as ethnic nationalities as we tend to want to portray today. We have individual needs. We have collective needs. And I am saying, intellectuals like him and others that have the opportunity to mold public opinion must begin to speak to the real issues. We've been on this road since before independence. Nigeria is not the only country in the world that was colonized. Even Britain was colonized. America was colonized. China was humiliated, was occupied by different countries. Some other countries were actually enslaved, some were conquered, some were suppressed. We don't have the worst of histories when it comes to colonialism. Let us take lessons from even our colonial masters. They were able, the reason Britain was able to conquer probably half of the entire universe was because they were able to unify their country around a national agenda for world conquest, irrespective of their plurality in ethnicity. Britain is made up of plural ethnic groups.
As much as the Irish.
Even within the Scots, you have Jewish people, you have Asians, you have Germanic peoples, you have Greek peoples. They are all United Kingdom today.
And there are agitations for some independence also within Britain. The Scots are still insisting on opting out.
And that is why the state is managing it delicately. That's why there's no marginalization.
So it's just all about managing this.
It's management. That is why, for example,
and it boils down to the leaders.
England, for example, dominates British politics. They have the largest constituency in parliament. But you know what? Through a deliberate and purposeful leadership towards national cohesion.
Victor says he doesn't agree with you that the leaders of the country have made it very impossible for us to be united and see ourselves first as Nigerians. We need a brand new constitution, nothing amended.
The constitution did not make leaders do this.
It made them. Can I read out a few portions that will show you exactly? It is the constitution that creates that. It is the constitution. No. You are saying something that is wrong and it's in black and white. I can give you 4 things the constitution put in place, which if we remove this afternoon, will change the situation in those areas.
I haven't told you the constitution is perfect.
No,
I didn't tell you it's divinely revealed. I said it's a work in progress.
I'm telling you that there are provisions. There are provisions in it.
Excuse me, sir.
Can we be more
responsible for the failure?
It is.
I am putting to you that it is
I'm reading it out to the public.
It is a leadership issue.
It is not.
It is individual.
It is not.
Now the question then is,
it is not.
The question is, how do we compel the leaders to begin to take actions, measures to unify us? If even constitutional provisions such as federal character is being brazenly violated, what other means do we use to?
Amechi, we're wasting our time here. He made a
just one moment.
No.
I'll come back to you.
He made a specific.
I'll come back to you.
All right.
Look at the history of nations, from the United States to France to England. you will notice that their progression towards nationhood has been guided by philosophers, thinkers, opinion models that actually at every point in time highlights
and understands the process of nation
and
building.
tries to make people understand their realities, how to live with it, and suggest possible ways to both the leadership and the led on the virtues of having a united nation with an agenda. That is what I expect people that come on national TV to begin to do. If you leave the Igbos today to their own volition, all the fraction, all the underlying fault lines will come to the fore. It is the same thing with the Jaws. It is the same thing with my native Ibra ethnic group. It is the same thing with the North. No part of Nigeria will survive, no matter how, under a structure that is actually imposed by us. We need to dismantle it. I need to begin to see the Igbo man who lives in local German state capital as a co-guide, and vice versa.
Let's hear from you.
Now, what have we been doing? What did we go to do in Aburi to agree on this matter so that it can become a common project? It was tossed aside, and 3.5 million people were killed on one side to force the way of the one who believes that all men are not born equal and that he is born to rule the other. What were we doing in Ponako? It was to get all the nationalities to come to agree on these things when government didn't see any need. And after 15 years, some people came up to say, when there was when there was providential intervention for somebody else to become president, they said they will make the country ungovernable. And
now,
we then,
I know. Let's profile solutions.
You don't understand what the problem is.
We don't have more. Let's manage the little time we have. Now, you said the way is a new constitution. What should the process be like of evolving a new constitution?
2 levels, 2-stage process. Anything less than that, if anybody is dumb enough to take Nigeria for granted, non-negotiable like they tell us every day, that person is going to learn the hard way, because that Nigeria will be the first casualty. They have been killing. So it doesn't matter how many more they kill.
By way of
South Africa,
Conference of Nationalities.
South Africa came to where they accepted that apartheid constitution like we have now cannot be the basis of society. They put it aside and called a meeting of all the owners of the place. It took them 5 years.
In this instance, in the Nigerian context, who are the owners that will come together?
The people who will be countries of their own, like you saw happen with Yugoslavia when they didn't discuss. The people that could be countries of their own, like you saw in Soviet Union, when it came to where they didn't find common ground. 15 countries.
Do I say ethnic nationalities?
Yes,
or pressure groups?
There are two stages. The first stage, a federation being a union of constitutions, and we having lost. We ceased to be a federation when the 5 constitutions that defined us got toppled. And what has to happen now is that the units that will federate will meet in the first instance and work out the constitutions that will then come in the second layer to agree among themselves. Under this one that is on the table, we have no federation right now. We have no union.
Dahiru,
the US agreed.
Excuse me.
The US agreed to be one union.
The premise of the argument is that a focused philosopher-king leadership ruling based on justice would deliver. How do we compel the leaders to toe that line very quickly?
We must continue to ask for such a leader.
Then the house will collapse on us.
An electoral process that lacks
the house will collapse on us. If anybody is hoping that this document is going to keep this union, no. He says something that we need to correct on air. He said
I'll come to you.
That is responsible for what is happening.
Let him just land. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Now, our flawed electoral process is enabled by the people because we are under the yoke of identity politics, all of us. Yes.
What is a federation doing with an INEC? What is a federation doing with an electoral body that can convert an election of
Our political process is premised on preponderance.
This is the kind of argument that will collapse this country.
And we need to begin to change that. For example, you would recall, as a columnist, I'm a Muslim from the north.
Okay.
I have held Buhari accountable severally on his sectionalism. I have described him as a limited sectionalism to a new state policy. And that is folly of leadership. And
so we need something
we
otherwise.
need something otherwise. If
Okay.
Buhari, for example, understand what I'm saying
Thank
he
you
will
so
not
much.
choke the presidency with one of his own ethnic group.
Majid Dahiru is a
My question
newspaper
is, how did you come about the
columnist.
Buhari as president?
Anthony Nnamdi is a legal practitioner. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for weighing in. It's a continuous conversation all about better Nigeria. Thank you also for being part of it. My name is Amechi, and we have a good time.